The Walmart on Clearfield Avenue didn't close until 11, but by 8:30 on a Tuesday night in January, it felt like the whole world had already gone home. Gwendolyn Marsh noticed that about the store after her shift ended, the way the fluorescent lights seemed louder when there were fewer people underneath them. She pulled off her blue vest, folded it the way she always did, even though nobody checked, and tucked it into her locker. Her feet ached. They always ached by Tuesday. She'd been on her feet since 7 that morning, first at the dry cleaners on Hobson Street, where she pressed shirts for 4 hours, then straight to Walmart where she ran a register for 8 more. 12 hours. $43 after taxes between the 2 jobs. It wasn't enough, and she knew it, and she had stopped letting herself do the math after 9 p.m. Because nothing good ever came from doing the math after 9 p.m. She zipped up her coat, the one with the broken zipper that she safety pinned at the collar, and walked to the back of the store to pick up her daughter from the break room. Hazel was 6 years old and had been doing homework at the little table in the corner since 5:30. One of the older cashiers, a woman named Pat, who had 3 grandkids and a soft spot for single mothers, had been keeping an eye on her. This was not an official arrangement. It was the kind of thing that happened in places where people had been working together long enough to stop pretending they didn't notice each other's lives. "She ate the crackers you left," Pat said, handing Gwendolyn her daughter's backpack. "And about half my granola bar." "Thank you," Gwendolyn said. She said it quietly because she meant it too much to say it loudly. Hazel was already putting on her coat, methodical about it the way 6-year-olds are. When they've learned that getting ready fast means less waiting in the cold. She had her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubborn chin. Though her father had been gone for 2 years and Gwendolyn had stopped mentioning him unless Hazel asked directly. Hazel didn't ask much anymore. They took the bus home. It was a 20-minute ride that felt longer in January when the heater only worked on one side, and they always ended up on the wrong side. Hazel leaned against Gwendolyn's arm and was almost asleep by the time they reached their stop. Gwendolyn carried her the last half block because the sidewalk was icy, and Hazel's boots had smooth soles that she kept meaning to replace. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that smelled like other people's dinners. Tonight it smelled like garlic and something fried, and Gwendolyn's stomach responded in a way she tried to ignore. She hadn't eaten since the peanut butter sandwich at noon. There hadn't been time. She put Hazel to bed still mostly in her clothes, just pulled off her boots and tucked the blanket up around her shoulders. Then she stood in the kitchen and opened a refrigerator out of habit more than hope. Half a carton of eggs. A block of store-brand cheese with the corner cut off. Mustard. A lemon that had gone soft. 3 slices of bread in a bag. She closed the refrigerator and stood very still for a moment. The problem wasn't dinner. She could make eggs. The problem was that she'd already counted what was in her account, and she knew exactly how much was there. And she knew exactly what was coming out of it on Friday. And she knew, with the specific and exhausting clarity that comes from being broke for long enough, that she was about $30 short. Not a lot. Not nothing. Just enough to make everything fragile. She made the eggs and ate them standing over the sink, and told herself things would look different in the morning. She had been telling herself this for about 14 months. And sometimes it was even true. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, when the sky was the color of old concrete and the temperature hadn't climbed above 22, Gwendolyn took Hazel to the grocery store. This was always a careful operation. She had a list. She had a calculator on her phone. She had a strategy that involved starting at the back of the store and, working forward, putting things in the cart only after she'd checked the price twice and keeping a running total in her head, even while Hazel asked questions about everything they passed. Which was constant. "Why is that cereal shaped like stars?" "Marketing," Gwendolyn said. "What's marketing?" "It's when someone wants you to want something." Hazel considered this. Does it work? On kids mostly. They moved through the produce section, the bread aisle, the canned goods. Gwendolyn picked up a jar of pasta sauce, checked the price, put it back, picked up the store brand. She did this automatically now, without the small grief it used to cause. That was either growth or surrender. And she had decided not to decide which. Hazel walked beside her with her hand on the cart, which was her job, steering it around corners. She took the job seriously. She took most things seriously for a 6-year-old, which people sometimes commented on, and Gwendolyn never knew quite how to respond. Because the truth was that Hazel had watched her mother be serious for long enough that it had become her default setting too. They were in the soup aisle when Gwendolyn realized she'd miscalculated. She pulled out her phone and added it up again, carefully, and the number came back the same. She was $11 over what she'd planned to spend. She stood there with her phone in her hand and went through the cart item by item in her head. The pasta sauce, the bread, the eggs, the apples, because Hazel would eat apples every day if you let her, and Gwendolyn had decided a long time ago that she would always find a way to have apples. The soup, the block of cheese, the 2 cans of beans. She put the soup back. That was $4. She put back one of the cans of beans. That was another $1.19. Still not enough. She was standing there doing the math a third time, her jaw tight, when she heard a voice nearby. "Excuse me, do you know if this is the low-sodium kind?" She looked up. A man was standing a few feet away holding 2 cans of chicken broth, and looking at them like they'd offended him. He was maybe 40, with the kind of tired face that came not from one bad night, but from a long series of them. He was wearing a work jacket with a small logo on the chest she couldn't have quite read, and there was a boy standing next to him. Maybe 9 or 10. Hands in his pockets, the hood of his sweatshirt pulled up even though they were inside. Gwendolyn looked at the cans. The one with the blue label is low sodium. The red one is regular. "Of course it is," the man said, like he'd known the answer would require a decision. He put the regular one back and held onto the blue. "Thank you." He didn't leave right away. His son had wandered a step toward the shelf and was looking at the cans with a kind of unfocused expression that Gwendolyn recognized because she had seen Hazel make it. The look of a child who has been in a grocery store for longer than is interesting and has gone somewhere else in their mind to wait it out. She went back to her cart, went back to her math. The man moved down the aisle and she forgot about him. She took out the block of cheese. That was $2.89. She could do without cheese for a week. She'd done it before. She stood holding it for a moment, longer than necessary, and then set it on the shelf behind the soup. Hazel was watching her. Gwendolyn didn't look at her daughter directly, because she didn't want to see Hazel understand what was happening. But she felt the understanding anyway, the way she always could, like a small weight settling between them. "Okay," Gwendolyn said. She put her phone in her pocket. "I think we're ready." She pushed the cart toward the front of the store. There were 4 registers open and she chose the one with the shortest line. She began unloading the cart the way she always did, organized, efficient, labels facing up. Hazel helped with the lighter things. The belt moved, the items moved. The cashier scanned them one by one. Gwendolyn watched the total climb. 31, 42, 58. She had $64 in her account. She knew this exactly. 63. She exhaled slowly. 64.11. She went still. The cashier looked at her. Young woman, maybe 19. Patient in the way of someone who had seen this before. "Did you want to take something off?" "Just 1 second. Gwendolyn looked at the belt. Everything was already scanned. She looked at the bags. The apples were in the first bag. She thought about putting them back and felt something close behind her sternum like a door. "I've got it." The voice came from behind her. She turned. It was the man from the soup aisle. He was standing at the end of the belt with his son beside him, their own basket of groceries in his hand, and his card was already extended toward the card reader. "I'm sorry," Gwendolyn said. "I'll cover the difference," he said. He said it quietly, not like an announcement, not like someone who wanted to be seen doing a good thing. Just a statement. Like he was talking about the weather or the low-sodium broth. "It's not a big deal. I can't let you do that." "You didn't let me do anything," he said. "I already did it." He nodded at the cashier, who processed the transaction with the efficiency of someone who was also not going to make this a bigger moment than it needed to be. Gwendolyn stood there with her wallet in her hand. Hazel was looking at the man's son. The boy was looking at Hazel with the mild curiosity of a child encountering another child, in a context that doesn't usually involve children. They assessed each other briefly and then both looked away. "Thank you," Gwendolyn said. The word felt insufficient and she knew it, and she said it anyway. "You helped me with the soup," the man said, like that explained it. Like soup advice was legal tender. She almost laughed. Not quite. She pushed her cart to the side to wait for him to check out, because it felt wrong to just leave. And because Hazel had already positioned herself near the boy, with the specific energy of a child who has decided a conversation is going to happen. His name was Boyd Callahan. He told her this while the cashier rang up his groceries. Said it the way people say their names when they've already made a decision about the next few minutes of their life. And a name is just where you start. His son was named Crispin, which Hazel found extremely interesting. "I've never met a Crispin," she announced. "There aren't many of us," the boy said, with the gravity of someone who had thought about this. Boyd paid for his groceries and they walked out of the store together into the cold. It wasn't planned, exactly. It was the kind of thing that happens when 2 people are going in the same direction and neither of them has a reason to rush. The parking lot was half empty. The wind came across it without anything to slow it down. "How far are you?" Boyd asked. "We took the bus," Gwendolyn said. He looked toward the road. The next bus wouldn't come for 40 minutes. She'd checked before they left the house. She knew this about this bus the way she knew everything about moving around the city without a car. Exactly, and with the specific fatigue of someone who has had to know it for a long time. "We can drive you," he said. "You don't have to. It's 20 degrees. She looked at Hazel, who was showing Crispin something on her coat, a small embroidered patch that she'd found at a school craft fair, and insisted on having sewn to her sleeve even though it was slightly crooked. Crispin was examining it with what appeared to be genuine interest. "Okay," Gwendolyn said. His car was warm and smelled like fast food and pine air freshener, and something else, something fainter, like wood shavings or sawdust. Boyd was a carpenter, she learned. Had his own small shop. Or had had his own small shop until 8 months ago when a large home renovation company moved into the area and took most of his contracts. He'd picked up some work at a construction company since then, the kind that paid by the hour and offered no guarantees, and was trying to figure out what came next. "It's a hard thing to rebuild," he said. He was watching the road. "When the thing you built falls apart." "Yes," she said. She didn't elaborate. He didn't ask her to. In the back seat, Hazel and Crispin had discovered a shared interest in a particular brand of animated movie that they were discussing with the intensity of film critics. Crispin had opinions. So did Hazel. At one point they disagreed about something involving a secondary character, and the discussion became briefly heated before resolving in what appeared to be a consensus, that both characters had valid points. Boyd glanced in the rearview mirror, and something in his face loosened slightly. "He doesn't do that much," he said quietly. "Talk like that." Gwendolyn looked at the boy in the mirror. "He seems like a good kid." "He is." Boyd paused. "It's been a hard year for him, for both of us. His mother left about 14 months ago." He said it flatly, not asking for sympathy, just stating a coordinate. "I'm still trying to figure out how to be two parents at once." Gwendolyn said nothing for a moment. Outside, the city passed in gray and beige and the occasional lit-up window. "You can't be," she finally said. "Two parents at once. You can only be one parent twice as present." He didn't respond immediately. She wondered if she'd said too much, or said it wrong. Then he nodded once, like he was filing something away. "That's a good way to put it." They reached her block. He pulled up in front of the building and she gathered the bags from the back seat. Hazel said goodbye to Crispin with the seriousness of someone concluding a business meeting. "It was nice to meet you," Hazel said. "You too," Crispin said. Gwendolyn thanked Boyd again. He told her again it was nothing. She believed him and didn't believe him at the same time. She carried the groceries up the 3 flights of stairs, Hazel ahead of her, and stood in the kitchen putting things away, while Hazel took off her boots and put them by the door the way she always did. The apples went into the bowl on the counter. Gwendolyn stood there looking at them for a moment. She thought about the $11, she thought about the cheese she'd put back. She thought about a man she didn't know, handing his card to a cashier without making it into something. She thought, "One parent, twice as present." She thought she had said that to him, but she could stand to hear it herself. She didn't expect to see him again. She was wrong about that. 3 weeks after the grocery store, she was waiting for the bus on Hemlock Street when a pickup truck slowed and then stopped at the curb, and Boyd leaned across the passenger seat to roll down the window in the slow way of old trucks where the window is still hand-cranked. "I'm not following you," he said. "I do a job on this block on Thursdays." "I believe you," she said, and she did. He drove her to work. It was 12 minutes out of his way, which she calculated without meaning to, and when she said she didn't want him to go out of his way, he said it was Thursday, and the job wasn't until 9 and he had time. So she got in. They talked the way people talk when they're moving through the city, and have something to look at besides each other. He told her about the construction work, a commercial building, going up downtown, that would take another 4 months, and then probably end. She told him about the dry cleaners, about Walmart, about the math of managing 2 jobs around a first grader's schedule. She said it matter-of-factly because it was fact. He listened without performing sympathy, which she appreciated more than she could explain. "Do you have anyone?" he asked. "Family around?" "My sister's in Phoenix, we talk." "That's something, it's something," she agreed. He dropped her off in front of the dry cleaners. She thanked him. He told her to take care of herself. She said she was trying. He said he knew. In February, Hazel got sick. Not seriously sick. Not the kind of sick that required hospitals or decisions. Just a fever that climbed to 103 on a Wednesday night and stayed there. And a cough that sounded worse than it was. And a child who needed to be home from school for 3 days. 3 days of school meant 3 days. Gwendolyn couldn't go into the dry cleaners. The dry cleaners paid her by the hour. She texted her manager, and her manager, a man named Royce, who was not unkind but operated a small business on thin margins, texted back, "Take care of her, let me know when you're back. No pay but also no problem." She knew how to be grateful for small mercies. She sat with Hazel on the couch with the TV on low, and Hazel's head in her lap, and worked through the numbers again on her phone. With 3 days missed, she would be short on rent. Not by much, but not nothing. Her landlord, a man named Patrice, who had been born in Haiti, and now owned 4 buildings in this part of the city and ran them with a combination of strictness and unexpected decencies, had worked with her once before. She would have to ask him again. She hated asking. On the second day, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Boyd standing in the hallway with a paper bag and a boy who looked like he had been told to look calm about this and was doing his best. "Crispin, school had a half day," Boyd said. "We were near here. I made soup." She looked at the bag. She looked at him. "You made soup," she said. "Chicken noodle. From scratch, not from a can." Crispin helped. He glanced at his son, who confirmed this with a nod. Gwendolyn stepped back from the door. "Come in." Hazel was on the couch in her pajamas with a blanket over her legs and a thermometer on the cushion beside her, because Gwendolyn checked her temperature every 2 hours. She sat up when she saw Crispin. "I'm sick," she announced, with the particular pride of a child who has a good reason to be on the couch in the middle of the day. "I had a fever last month," Crispin said, settling into the chair across from her, like this was a normal place for him to be. 102. Mine was 103. He received this with appropriate respect. Boyd followed Gwendolyn into the kitchen, and she got out bowls without asking whether he was staying, because it seemed clear that he was, and because the apartment felt different with another adult in it. Not crowded, just less like a space that was holding its breath. He ladled the soup and she cut the bread she'd made the night before, because baking bread was something she could do when she couldn't do much else. And they ate in the small living room, the 4 of them, with Hazel wrapped in her blanket, and Crispin sitting on the floor when he finished eating, because it turned out there was a specific cartoon Hazel liked that he had never seen, and she was going to introduce him to it, whether he had planned on this or not. Gwendolyn and Boyd sat at the table that was also her desk, 4 feet away, and talked quietly while the TV played. He told her about his mother, who had called that morning from Indiana worried about him, in the way mothers are worried about sons who are clearly not fine but who insist they're fine. He told her this with a small tired smile that she recognized as the expression of someone who has become skilled at reassuring people who love them. She told him about Hazel's father, because it was easier to tell someone who had already told her something first. He had not been a bad man, she said. He had just been a man who was not made for the life they were building together, and had figured this out too late, and left, and was somewhere in Oregon now doing what she didn't know. Hazel asked about him sometimes. Gwendolyn answered honestly. "Honestly how?" Boyd said. "Honestly like, he loved you, and he wasn't able to stay, and that is a thing that is true about him and not about you. She's 6. She doesn't need more than that yet." He looked at her for a moment. "Crispin asks about his mom," he said. "I don't always know what to say." "You don't have to know everything," she said. "You just have to not lie." He was quiet for a while after that. On the couch, Hazel was explaining something to Crispin about one of the characters with great seriousness, and Crispin was listening in the way he seemed to listen to most things. Like he thought listening was something you should do properly. "She's something," Boyd said, watching Hazel. "She's everything," Gwendolyn said simply. By March, Gwendolyn had gotten a 3rd job, a few hours on Sunday mornings at a bakery 3 blocks from her apartment, where the owner, a woman in her 60s named Therese, who wore flour on her forearms like a second skin, was willing to pay cash and let Hazel sit in the back and color while her mother worked. It wasn't enough to fix everything. It was enough to make March less frightening than February. Boyd had picked up 2 private clients, homeowners, who wanted bookshelves built and a kitchen updated, and who had found him through a neighbor's recommendation. He was cautiously optimistic, which Gwendolyn had learned was how he was about most things. Cautiously, but genuinely. On a Saturday in the middle of March, when the snow had finally stopped pretending it might come back, he drove Gwendolyn and Hazel to a park near the river that Hazel had wanted to see since a classmate had described a specific duck situation there that sounded promising. The duck situation turned out to be real. There were ducks, and they were close enough to see clearly, and Hazel stood at the edge of the path for a long time watching them, with an expression of complete satisfaction. Crispin stood beside her, equally absorbed. Boyd took a photo of them standing there and showed it to Gwendolyn, and she looked at it for longer than she needed to. 2 small people watching ducks in the March light. her daughter and someone else's son. Their coats touching at the shoulders. "Can I have that?" she said. He sent it to her phone. They walked the path along the river, and the kids ran ahead and came back and ran ahead again the way children do when they have been given space. Boyd and Gwendolyn walked at the pace of two people who are not in a hurry because they have decided, without saying it aloud, not to be. He told her that one of the private clients wanted to hire him for a bigger project. A basement renovation, 6 weeks of work, enough money to stabilize things for a while. She told him she was glad. She meant it fully. She told him that Therese at the bakery had offered her an extra shift on Wednesday mornings, starting in April, that she had done the math. And with the extra shift and the Walmart hours she would finally have enough of a buffer that she wouldn't have to recalculate every week. He nodded. He understood what that meant, the specific relief of no longer doing the math. "I know what it feels like," he said, "when the numbers finally land somewhere survivable." "Survivable isn't the same as okay," she said. "No," he agreed, "but it's a door." She thought about that, about the door. About a grocery store in January, a register, $64.11. About a man who handed his card to a cashier like it was the simplest thing. Because for him in that moment it was. And because some people are wired to do the simple thing when they see it clearly enough. She had been raised by a mother who said that you couldn't accept things from strangers, that it made you small, or made you owe something, or made you into a person who needed things from strangers. She had believed this for a long time. She was not sure she believed it anymore. She thought there was a difference between needing things and being seen. She thought Boyd had seen her in that soup aisle, and had simply responded to what he saw, the way you respond to a door that's stuck or a window left open in the rain. Not because she was helpless. Because she was there and so was he. Hazel came running back down the path. "There's a really good stick," she announced. "There are always good sticks," Gwendolyn said. "This one is different." Crispin agrees. "Come see." So they went to see. And the stick was, in fact, and by certain measures, a good stick. Wide and smooth and curved just right. The kind of stick that feels like it was meant to be found. Hazel held it with both hands. Crispin walked beside her on the way back, talking about something she was listening to with her whole face. Boyd walked next to Gwendolyn. Their footsteps were quiet on the path. The river moved the way rivers move, without waiting for anyone to be ready. There was no moment where everything changed. There was no speech. There was no single decision. There was a grocery store in January, and a man with 2 cans of soup, and a kid who talked about cartoons with great seriousness, and a series of Thursdays, and a bowl of chicken noodle soup, and a photograph of 2 children watching ducks. Sometimes that's all it is. One person noticing something they could have walked past. One moment of not walking past. And then the long, slow, ordinary business of seeing where that leads.